The powerful oligarch from Putin's inner circle criticizes Putin. Russian state takes more control over Russian people. Wildfires are raging now with no firefighters in sight. All are in the front lines. Russia introduces Newspeak. The Chinese car manufacturers punish and humiliate Russians. But the biggest news today is more death of Russian generals and oil company executive. Howdy everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news update straight out of the mad circus that Russia has become. But first things first. There is no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. And the news, I call them crazy news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media. Before I start, please forgive me my sarcasm. Things are so dark and bad these days that without sarcasm, I'd simply die. Let me start with positive news. You know, folks, Inside Russia is the positive corner of internet. I always start with the positive news from Russia and of Russia. It kind of sets the mood, you know. There are rumors that Russia is going to attack Ukraine. Russia is conducting a massive military training near the border with Ukraine. And them bad Satanists in the West, no good bloodthirsty vampires, are accusing Russia, peaceful Russia, of preparing the invasion. Well, no, and no. I just ran into a statement that Russia's Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov recently made. He gave a promise: no invasion will happen. Russia will not invade Ukraine, and it's just a laughingstock. Check this out. Security of the European continent became the main topic of discussion between the Minister of Foreign Affairs and his Italian colleague. On this meeting with Luigi Di Vaia, Sergei Lavrov discussed all the issues. In Moscow, we don't have high hopes that the West will feel ashamed for spreading lies about the preparation of imaginary invasion into Ukraine, considering military involved in drills and exercises already returned or will return to where they're based. Foreign news media is still pushing these lies and this hysteria, war hysteria. Are some of the partners, are they ashamed or not, for the initiation and spreading of disinformation? And indulge in the information terrorism. I don't even have the correct word to describe it. I don't think they will ever repent for that. But we need to expose them. This is happening on a daily basis. To be honest, you can't really get anything from them. Someone is spreading those lies. Someone who is following because of consensus and solidarity of that terminology. They understand what's happening, but they don't talk about that. And some even enjoying what's happening. For them, the most interesting thing is having a role in another Russophobic ploy. So you see, Sergei Lavrov just told us that there will be no invasion under any circumstances, and all those lies, they're just rumors. There are some bad actors spreading them all over the world, and they're doing informational terrorism. So there will be no invasion. Oh, wait a second. This was made. Oh my goodness, I missed. This was made on February 17th, 2022. And Russia did invade in 7 days from that statement. And a great part of Ukrainian lands were stolen by Russia. And many cities, towns, and villages in Ukraine have been razed. And hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians have been killed or maimed. Oh. This is July 2025, 3.5 years into the invasion. Invasion! And Lavrov promised us there would be no invasion. Please forgive me for this sarcasm, I wish I could face Sergei Lavrov and look into his eyes. I'd ask him one question. Sergei, was everything you've done to Russia and Ukraine, was it worth it? Moving to another news. That's a positive, real positive, I promise. Russians are going to be all right after all. Yes, I talk of countries' economic problems extensively, a lot, all the time. That's what they are. One of the dark clouds right now above the country is agriculture. Things are so bad that for the first time in the entire history of Russia, it has run out of potatoes. Now it's running on potatoes imported from Egypt and Pakistan. Well, good news. Russian people, fear no more. You will be fed. You will have your potatoes. You will be taught how to grow potatoes right in your kitchens. Good Russian scientists have developed cutting-edge know-how technology and offer Russians to grow potatoes right at their homes. Here it is. Here how it looks like. You see a kitchen. Russians don't have big kitchens. 10 square meters, 8 square meters, that's like 80 square feet. But look how compact and how nicely grown that potato is at the kitchen. I like it. Check it out. Right here. Right over here. That's... Wow. After all, are not available to everyone in stores these days. Even according to Rosstat, Russian statistics agency, that kind of lies a lot. Potatoes have risen in price by 173% in 12 months. Imagine if Rosstat says 173%, how much they have risen in price in real life. Wholesale prices for potatoes also have broken all-time record. And according to this wonderful innovation, the method does not require expensive fertilizers or special equipment. Agronomists, lots of interesting things. I notice how Russian officials, they speak, how do I say that, in a very strange, odd language. And well, judge for yourself. I call it newspeak. There is no economic recession in Russia, but instead, there's a gradual slowdown of economic growth. Gradual slowdown becoming negative growth, but constant negative growth. There are no utility accidents in Russia, but instead, there is a reduction in the household heating. There are no explosions, but instead there are loud pop sounds. There is no war, but instead there's a special military operation. There are no floods, but instead only flooding. There's no recession, economic recession, but instead there's negative growth. There are no fires, but instead there's smoke. There are no plane crashes, but instead there are only hard landings. And I will continue learning this newspeak, and I'll be sharing it with you. The next news is actually from the Ministry of Suffocation. Well, there's no such ministry, but the entire Russian government can be called that because it's kind of trying to suffocate Russian people with new laws and regulations. The Russian authorities will quadruple the maximum fine for high school students and young men liable for military service for failure to inform the military enlistment offices about them moving to new residence addresses. This is stated in a law adopted by the parliament. The explanatory note to the law says that in 2023 alone, 47,000 people were brought to administrative responsibility for failure to report their physical move of their residence. More than 28,000 people of them received fines. Currently, a fine of one such offense is from anywhere from 1 to 5,000 rubles. That's approximately from $15 to $60. It's issued for failure to inform enlistment authorities about such move. The senators decided that fine amount was incommensurable with the act being committed, so they increased it several times. New fines are from 10 to 20,000 rubles, and they will be imposed on high school students. Yes. I mean, why not? High school students, of course. Those prime examples. They need to do all the enlistments. Not their parents, but the school kids. Also, for potential military conscripts, the fines will be imposed if they change their place of residence of their stay, but do not register in a new place. There is a special state procedure called registration. You have to let the government know where you reside so it can come and get you quickly. And or if they do not inform the municipal authorities that conduct primary military registration for high school students or military enlistment office for military personnel about the move. Anything that Russian government does these days is aimed to one of those two goals. First is to get more control on the population, and the second is to get more money out of the population. And in many cases, it's both. Two goals simultaneously, morph into one. The next piece of news is godly. I'm actually a little nervous talking about that because I'm a religious man, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. Okay. It's godly news, or perhaps it's ungodly. I don't know. I'm really confused about that. I'm sorry. They discovered a new sin in Russia. Russian Orthodox Church called it a sin to write the word God with a smaller letter, and it's a very serious sin. Archpriest Alexander Ilyashenko said that writing God with small letter is a reinforcement of atheistic sentiments in society. Atheistic sentiments in society. That's according to the newspaper Paragraph. And that is a sin. That's a very, very, very serious sin. Damn good Russian priests. They sanctify nuclear missiles called Satana, the Satan. They pray for the victory of Russian weapons. They say that Russian soldiers, if killed in the battlefield, they go straight to heaven and it's not a sin, to kill someone in the war. And that's all okay to them. But if someone writes God with small letter, and all of a sudden, it's a very serious sin. I know that there are lots of Christians out there watching me right now. What do you think? Please let me know down below in the comments. In the next piece of news, that's another positive news. Putin was meeting college students from Archangel, a city in the north of Russia. Via video, of course. I wonder if he uses Zoom. Could be. Putin rarely meets people in person, let alone students. I don't even remember him, any occasion of him meeting students in person. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. Putin asked how much the students earn while working in summer jobs. They answered 70,000 rubles. Putin considered the salary of 70,000 rubles, that right now is $900, in Archangel very low for students. The president stressed that in his student years, in the 70s, they earned a lot. And 4 or 5 salaries earned in summer could have been enough to buy a new Lada car. That's 1,000 rubles he was earning in the summer, doing a summer job. Oh, check this out. She's saying, that's 70,000, that's what we make in the summer. How much is it? This month? She goes, yeah, it's in a month. It's very low. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, very low. When we worked, we were students. We made 1,000 rubles per month. Back then, in the Soviet times, that was a lot. The Lada car cost 5,000. So we were making 1,000, 1,500. That was support. Some students lived on for the entire year. Yeah, it was very, very serious financial support. Good Vladimir, what in the world are you smoking? Or are you just making fun of us? My dad was in charge of a dozen train engines in the 70s and in the 80s in Rostov-on-Don, working at a large combine harvester plant called Rasselmash, Russia's largest, really. His monthly salary, a very highly qualified worker, was 150 rubles. On top of that, he received 20 to 30 rubles, depending on circumstances, in bonuses. Premia. A brand new Lada back then cost 7,000 rubles. My dad could buy a new Lada for 35 months, considering our family would be saving every kopeck he earned for 3 years straight. That's in theory. And yes, Ronald Reagan was correct. A Soviet citizen had to wait in line to buy a Lada for about 10 years. So it was not really it was like a science fiction buying a car. And that was in theory. In reality, we spent every single kopeck, every single ruble, everything Dad earned for food and clothing. We didn't buy anything else. And it was barely enough every month. Therefore, we could buy Lada never. That was our world, real world. And in Putin's world, every student back in the 70s could buy a new Lada, work in a summer job for just 3-4 months. You know, buying a Lada in the USSR was like buying a plane in the USA right now. I'm telling you, the old man is delusional. He's so detached from reality. Now, let's move to fires. Someone from Canada asked me in the comments if Russia gets forest fires. You bet. This is what a train driver filmed from his train riding, going through a wildfire in Transbaikalia, in the eastern part of Russia. And this is nothing unusual. Every single year, forest fires happen in taiga. Russia is a huge country and most of it is covered by trees, taiga. Well, the last 3 years have been different. The firefighters are gone, nowhere inside, and the financing of firefighter services is also gone. Where have all that gone to? To the West, of course. To the special military operation, that's how in Russia they call the war. All Russians to the front, all are to kill as many Ukrainians as possible. Firefighters yesterday, a recruit or, a soldier today, to the front line, to the meat grinder. And money? Oh, come on, every single penny, kopeck, goes to the federal budget to finance the military-industrial complex. Hey, we need more rockets, bombs, bullets, guns, tanks, planes, and nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles called Satana, the Satan. Well, you know what? I'm afraid those firefighters won't be coming back home soon. Well, ever. And the wildfires, they will be raging and growing more and raging more. Let's move to another piece of news. Moscow City Hall has banned single pickets against the relief of Joseph Stalin installed at Taganskaya metro stop station due to the threat of CV-19, coronavirus. I remind you, a relief to Joe Stalin was built in Moscow in a metro stop, subway station recently. This is it. Man is actually praying to Joseph Stalin and laying flowers to him. That older man is laying flowers to Joseph Stalin and praying to Joseph Stalin. I played you this video because I'm very ashamed of it, but I feel like everyone has to know. The entire world has to know what is happening to Russia. It's not well, okay? Trust me, every time I play it, it's hard. But anyway, not all Russians are like that older man. Not all Russians are fond of blood-sucking vampire Stalin, the worst Russian citizen, Soviet citizen that stood on earth. For example, the members of Yabloko political party don't like Stalin, and they want to protest this relief at Taganskaya metro stop. The prefecture of the Central District of Moscow refused to approve pickets against the Joseph Stalin relief at Taganskaya metro station. The Yabloko party members planned to hold the protests, not big ones, individual pickets. The information came from Kirill Goncharov, the deputy chairman of the Moscow branch of Yabloko party. The prefecture explained the refusal to approve by the emerging epidemiological situation and the high alert regime in Moscow. Well, high alert regime was introduced by mayor's decree in 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic began. The high alert regime in Moscow has not been lifted since. Moscow, 5 years later, is still technically on paper under high alert regime because of the coronavirus. Well, you know what? Coronavirus is gone. For 3 years, it's been 3.5 years. It's been long gone. And I remember clearly, in March 2022, right after the war started, some Russian official came, I think it was a minister of health, and said Russia doesn't have coronavirus anymore. It stopped all of a sudden because a different disaster started happening, okay? But the Moscow mayorate still gives this excuse, and on this excuse, the mayor's office regularly refuses to hold opposition rallies and pickets. Well, July 2025, Putin's Russia for you. I don't know what to add. And speaking of Putin's Russia, Putin signed a law authorizing the KGB to monitor the interaction of Russian scientific organizations with foreign entities. It is noted that the KGB control will make it possible to monitor the transfer of scientific research and data to outside of Russia. Like it has much, you know. By December 1st, 2025, all educational and scientific organizations must post information about any international agreements, paid or unpaid, with foreign individuals and legal entities that were concluded before the new law came into force for verification by the KGB officers. So this new law, works retrospectively, and it works all the way to 1991, since Russia was born as a new country. So imagine that any university, any school, if it had any relationship, correspondence, contracts, exchange programs with any foreign university, school, a person, you know, they must report it all the way to 1991. This is July 2025, Putin's Russia for you. Friends, before moving to the next news, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you. Those of you who support me by watching my videos and live streams, by interacting, writing comments, sending me messages, praying with me, and sending you love. Thank you those who bought me coffees at buymecoffee.com. Thank you for Patreon and PayPal. Your support shows me that you value my work highly. Just know that inspires me. It inspires me and it gives me energy to move forward. Monetized or demonetized, I have been demonetized, well, actually twice now. I was just recently demonetized for the second time by Google. But I make you a promise that no matter what, I will continue standing up for freedom, fairness, standing up against the truth, against Putin's regime for the truth, standing up for changes in Russia, you know. Monetized, demonetized, doesn't matter. I will continue my fight. Thank you. The next news comes from, that's a good one, from the rooftops of all over Moscow. the rooftops. If you come to Moscow this summer, you will find this. A very rich schedule of cultural events. For example, 25th of June, Michael Jackson's legendary hits on the Roof Club. 5th of July, world rock and pop hits played on string instruments such as Rammstein, Tattoo, Michael Jackson, etc. July 11th, symphonic rock and pop show. Looks like my light was off a little bit. I'm sorry. Symphonic rock and pop show. Immerse yourself in the atmosphere of jazz and soul, they say. Come and visit our performances, plays. Now, immerse yourself in the atmosphere of jazz and soul. July 28th, jazz, soul, reggae, funk, R&B, Michael Jackson, James Brown, Apple Music, Adele, etc. If you forgive me for a second. 3rd of July, jazz, funk, disco and house, Secret Affair. 6th of July, soul, jazz, blues, all on the Roof Club. 6th, Elton John, George Michael, Tina Turner, etc. Embark on a musical journey through the countries. 27th of June, Latin rhythms on the roof. On the 29th of June, Stories from Paris on the roof. Edith Piaf, Delida, Zaz. 29th of June, Evening in San Remo, Italian hits on the Roof Club. 3rd of July, musical country trip, New York to Paris to Italy. 4th of July, the new life of the Italian mega hit San Remo stars Albano, Andriano Celentano, and I actually saw a little movie they made, and I wanted to show it to you. Whoops, that's not it. And that's not it. There you go. There is music to the show. Imagine there's nice jazz playing, and I'll show you in a second. I'm a little, for example. Nice music, I can't really play you the music because of the copyright issue. I'll be hit for the copyright. But this is a kind of like a preview of what's going to happen in Moscow, what's happening, Nice people, very beautiful ladies, nicely dressed musicians. Everything's expensive, looking rich and luxurious. Moscow is the best as ever, Clean, nice, and these people are happy. And look at them. I mean, it's wonderful. Really wonderful. They're having a good time. I'm very glad. Look at Moscow. And this is not fake. I'm telling you, this is how Moscow looks like. I loved that city for what it is. It's fantastic. The center of Moscow, the old Moscow, the rooftops. Yeah, they do perform. I mean, look at the scenery. Look at the, right behind there's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs where Sergei Lavrov works. Look at the Yeah, it's nicely made, nicely filmed, nicely edited. There's a lot of money everywhere. You can smell it. People are having a good time. The boats and lights and shows and this musical instruments or fiddlers and everything. The jazz, rhythm and blues, and saxophone. People in Moscow are doing fantastic. And if you ask anything who's recently been to Moscow, they'll tell you, hey, look, this country's economy is fine. Everyone's got money, restaurants are full of people, everything's nice, especially if they stay in the center of the city. The war? It's far away, People are dying in Ukraine? Don't bother us with that. We have lots of cultural events, we have lots of music. We listen to jazz on the rooftops. We're listening to the international hits, Michael Jackson, Alban, Adriana Celentano, Edith Piaf, We're too busy for that. Don't bother us with the depressing stuff. Everything's fine for us. Well, that's Moscow for you. The Muscovites who can afford living in the center of city, okay? A lot of foreigners who come to Moscow, they get the impression of Russia based on what they see in this video, where everything is just nice and wonderful. There is a war going on. There are so many Russians that are suffering, so many that cannot afford potatoes any longer, that switch to pasta, bread, and water. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed or maimed on both sides. Ukrainian drones come to Russia every single day, and Russian missiles and drones, wave after wave, raise everything in Ukraine and kill people. Moscow is doing all right, okay? Listening to jazz, very nice, very nice. No comments here. The next piece of news also comes from Russian people. The Russians' attitude towards Donald Trump has changed. It has sharply deteriorated. Reconciliation with the United States is now expected by 1.5 times fewer citizens than in March. After the breakdown of negotiations on Ukraine, Z propaganda abandoned its glorification of Donald Trump and returned to the traditional hostility towards the White House. And the Kremlin bots also received the same orders. The population also felt the change in the mood of propaganda, as they can see from a June survey by the Fond of Общественного мнения, FOM. It's a sociological center connected with the Kremlin. They, I actually do believe that survey because I feel that too, talking to Russian people. In April, Donald Trump was our man in Washington. Donald Trump had Russian soul. Donald Trump was the savior of Russia. Donald Trump was about to save Russia, to lift sanctions. USA was the great country with hardworking, good people, with Christian values. That's April. Now in June, the satanic leader of the satanic country. No good bombs, the Satanists. Trump, liar, red-haired clown. I'm telling you how Russian people are feeling now, and that's how they are expressing their emotions. Russian people change their opinions on the fly. You just need to insert the right thought in their heads and press the right button. And that's what happens. I'm not saying that they cannot go back and glorify Donald Trump again. That might happen just in a couple months, Who knows? We'll see. I'm keeping my eyes open. The next piece of news is about more state control. I don't know, is this possible to get more state? Well, I guess they haven't exhausted all their options yet, and perhaps they're just getting started. The Russian state wants more and more control of Russian people, and this is actually pretty funny. Okay, but it's sad at the same time, but it's funny. Look, the Russian parliament is preparing a list of acceptable names for newborns. The purpose of the list is to reduce the number of unusual names. That's going to cause bullies. That's going to cause bullying in the future, they say. Moscow region children's ombudswoman Ksenia Mishanova supported the initiative, believing that strange names can provoke bullying when the kids grow up. Therefore, that strange names are not needed, and it's up to state to decide which name can be good for a child and which name is forbidden. And the parents, how about their opinion? Who needs parents' opinions after all? If the state decides what's good or bad for their kids, parents out of the picture. Don't need you. The next piece of news is of lack of money. Really, that's what it comes down to. The Ministry of Culture of Transbaikalia region, that's a large region in the east of Russia. There's not much going on there. So the Ministry of Culture obliged its employees to search for volunteers for the war with Ukraine. That is reported by the local news media, chita.ru. Employees of museums, theaters, and libraries of Transbaikalia should search for applicants, convince them to sign a military contract, and report daily to the authorities of their search results. The sanctions are threatened for those who do not comply with the requirements to locate and convince Russian men to fight. It's not a joke, not a fake. There's so many news coming these days out of Russia that they look like jokes or fakes, and sometimes I get confused. Think about it; it can't be true. This just can't be. The Ministry of Culture, the librarians, the freaking people who work in theater. Well, I checked. It's true. You can go to chita.ru and check it yourself. This work to assist the military registration and enlistment offices should be done for free by this culture people. And it doesn't matter if people want this job or not, because they are promised to be punished for non-fulfillment of plans that are given to them. How do they do that? How do they fulfill plans? Well, there's a plan approved by the Minister of Culture of the province for recruitment of candidates. I mean, it's really hard for me to not to laugh. Just can you feel the absurdity of this? There is a plan approved by the Minister of Culture for recruitment of candidates. Now, what is this plan about? All right, it must be constant campaigning in educational and culture facilities, at mass events organized, and in public places. Distribution of printed materials and weekly updates of campaigning in social networks. You see, they're threatened to be punished. How do you punish a librarian? Well, a very big punishment is to fire a librarian, because where would she work, or she or he work? It's really hard. Or a person who works in a theater. They have certain mindset that they like working where they work, in libraries and theaters, the jobs they like. They can't find job anywhere else. Or worse, you can actually imprison them. Now, why is this happening? The money for sign-up bonuses no more, and people willing to die in Ukraine no more. I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow, so please tune in. So they have started different approaches to luring Russian men in. It's one of those news. I actually don't know how to comment. I don't want to use sarcasm here. I'm speechless. And I'm ashamed because that is happening in my country. It is Stalin's terror. That's what it is. It starts happening again. But at first, now I understand how it started happening in like 1930s. It starts happening in people's souls. Not minds, but souls. Right here. In people's hearts. And once their souls turn dark, that darkness starts driving their actions, and their actions are ugly. Please forgive us. I don't know what to say. This news was, by the way, there will be many more news like that in Russia, coming out of Russia and about Russia. And I would like to remind you that every single day I come up with 9 news that I find important, that I find that matter, and I make them available to patrons of Inside Russia, along with my commentaries and analysis. And I feel that this news help people to stay informed about what's happening in Russia. So, if you want to stay on top of things Russian, now you know where to go and get the information. Consider becoming patron of Inside Russia at patreon.com and, get all the news you need. I'm going to put the link down below in the comments and in the description. There'll also be a link, so check it out. The next piece of news is actually amusing. I rotate between different kinds of news and I jump from news like, cultural recruitment to something very amusing and interesting. Isolating Russia and deliberately rejecting international cooperation will not strengthen the country's sovereignty, but will accelerate its lagging behind the world, said this guy right here. His name is Mikhail Gutseriev. He is the head of Safmar Group, a billionaire, a oligarch. I quote, "Cooperation, of course, while respecting national interests, creates access to technology, knowledge, markets, and talents. Future models of Russia's interaction with the world should be built not on the foundation of confrontation, but through mature integration." Unquote. According to Gutseriev, Russia should remain a member of global economic, scientific, technical, and logistic alliances. At the same time, Gutseriev urged not to entertain illusions about restoring relationship with those countries that are commonly called unfriendly, well, in other words, enemy countries, in about next 15 years. Fortunately, there are many more countries in the world with powerful economic and technological potential that are ready to build cooperation with Russia. We are obliged to use these opportunities of this interaction for our own development, the billionaire noted. You know, Gutseriev is completely right. Russia is doomed to lag behind. What surprises me is that one of Putin's inner circle people, the oligarch billionaire Gutseriev, openly criticizes Putin's system. Putin's built the system, so if you criticize his system, you criticize himself, the Tsar. It is a very interesting development. I don't remember in the recent history in the last 3 years that someone from close Putin's circle criticized his creation so directly. He's saying that Russia is doomed to lag behind, and that is true. Well, in general, Gutseriev was right. Russia is behind already and will stay behind. It's just, I want you to note a couple things. First, he says that Russia needs to cooperate with others for its own advantage. In other words, to take the technologies, to take the money, to take resources, not giving back. That's how I understood his hidden message that he said. That's Russia that needs to benefit, you know? And the second, there aren't that many countries in the world who can cooperate with Russia and who have enough level of technology that Russia can benefit. I mean, at this point, who? China? Yeah, right. The Chinese are shutting down the cars, you know, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And the Indians? I don't think so. So who else? Who else? Russia is doomed. It is behind and will stay behind. Now, the next piece of news is funny and I don't know. It's a mixed feeling. Now, judge for yourself. The Chinese manufacturers have begun to block cars unofficially imported into Russia. Russian car dealers have reported a massive failure of Chinese premium Li Xiang hybrid cars, which are imported circumventing the official dealer network. It's called gray import. The cars stop working after latest software update. Now, so you understand, before the war, there was one and only way to import cars into Russia. Official way. Manufacturer would set up a company inside Russia and hire lots of dealers and would sell cars that would come from manufacturer straight into Russia to the dealers. And the dealers would provide a warranty service, regular services, software updates, everything. Okay? If you went and bought brand new car and, let's say, to Germany, brand new BMW, and would bring it to Russia, you would not be able to do that. That was illegal. The gray importing in Russia was illegal. Well, after the start of the war, the Western companies left Russia, and it became the only way to get things into Russia. Yes, you still can buy cars from Europe, but they are imported as gray import, and they cost an arm and a leg, and not too many of them, okay? So the Chinese kind of replaced everyone else, and they started selling their cars in Russia. So now those cars that are gray imported from China to Russia, they simply become bricks. In Autovernissage dealer company, which supplies the cars, it was reported that by blocking the cars, the manufacturer, the Chinese manufacturer, kills gray imports, since cars imported this gray way sell for much less than the cars sold at the dealers. And that's the point of gray import. Let's say if you go to China, fly to China, and get yourself a car, let's say for $10,000, and drive it back to Russia, then you get yourself a car and you can resell it in Russia for, let's say, $15,000. Now, the Chinese, if they are selling directly into Russia, they don't, that's $10,000 that the car costs in China. In Russia, it costs $18,000 because the Chinese just charge premium for, they using the position that Russians in, they using and abusing. Okay, so a lot of Russians would fly to China, would bring the cars from China and save lots of money. And the Chinese don't like that. And that's what they started. They started killing those gray imported cars. The dealer said that they're 90% sure that the gray imported vehicles will not be activated outside China and the people won't be able to use them. Well, what is a blocking of car anyway? The car becomes brick. Real brick. You can't start it. Nothing works. You can't drive it. You can't move it. The steering wheel is locked. You can't do anything with it. The only thing you can do with a blocked car is to junk it. Go and give it to a junkyard. It is very ironic. Vladimir Putin recently went to China about 9 months ago and praised the Chinese manufacturers, how great they are and how they're helping Russians. And now they are paying Russian people and Putin back. And speaking of bricks, now I'm talking about another kind of brick, the economic union called BRICS Plus. Russia has more BRICS problems than the Chinese car that have turned BRICS. For the first time, China's leader Xi Jinping will not attend the BRICS summit, which will be held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on July 6th and 7th. And all of a sudden, Russian propaganda forgets about the BRICS whatsoever. 1 year ago, exactly at this time in the summertime, I was telling you how BRICS was all over the informational space of Russia. BRICS summit in Kazan, BRICS games, BRICS ministers getting together. Every time it was a huge event. BRICS people talking to each other, and BRICS is gone. That's it. There's no more. I had to look for this information to actually dig it out. Russians are not fettered any longer. BRICS is becoming BRICS. This news speaks volume, doesn't it? The next piece of news is also interesting. And it's food for thought. Now, I invite you to think about it. All data on mobilization in Russia, preparation, conducting, and so forth, has been classified. This decree of classifying the information was signed by the President Putin recently. Information about Russia's foreign policies is also classified now. The reason? The disclosure could harm the state. It's very interesting news on the mobilization. I personally have written it down all over because now I'll share something with you. Russia is running out of men, and it's becoming obvious. The information is coming from the front lines that there's critical lack of men. At the same time, Russia is cutting sign-up bonuses a great deal. Remember, I told you how over years Russian state was increasing sign-up bonuses step by step. From 200,000 rubles back in 2022 went up all the way to up to 4 million rubles, 20 times. Okay, and 4 million rubles right now is $50,000+. All right, so the provinces started cutting, and when they were raising, step by step, but they're cutting a big deal. 2 provinces I know have cut their sign-up bonuses by 50% in half. Why? Because I think that there are no people who are willing to go and sign up any longer, all used up, and there are no money to pay them, really. And the Putin needs to do something real quick to feed the front lines with more fresh meat. What's it gonna be? New mobilization up in the air? Don't you smell it? Anyone? Please let me know down in the comments. I think so. I think it's coming. I think it's coming very soon. Early fall of 2025. The next news is tragic. An elevator carrying a family with young children fell from the 12th floor of an apartment building in Makhachkala. It's a city, large city, the capital of Dagestan province. This is what happened. Well, that's since winter of 2025, more than 60,000 elevators in Russian buildings have expired their service life. At the same time, in 2025, the authorities began to actively save on replacing failed elevator equipment. There has been an 8.5% decline in expenses from January to June of 2025 compared to 2024, the same time. They also started replacing elevators with cheaper analogs and replacing cheaper spare parts. And en masse, Russian state started just extending elevators' service life on paper. And this is one of the results. In Makhachkala, there have been a few crashes in Moscow already, and it looks like it starts happening all over Russia. Not much I can say. Putin's Russia, summer 2025. All right. Before we move to the next, and that's going to be the last piece of news, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please let me know which news you like the most. 1 would be okay. 3 would be absolutely great. Perhaps you didn't like some news. Let me know. I need feedback to understand what I need to improve in later Friday Crazy News reports. So thank you so very much. If you haven't liked this video so far, I would really appreciate it if you do so. Of course, only if you liked what you just heard today. Now, the last piece of news, well, a few pieces of news about generals, colonels, and vice presidents of oil companies getting killed. 2 more generals and a colonel were killed this past week. And today, another executive of a Russian oil company, no, he didn't fly out of the window. Well, he fell off the balcony. That's something new, but hey, they gotta come up with new stuff, right? The deputy commander-in-chief of the Russian Navy, Major General Mikhail Gudkov, was killed in Kursk. Kursk is a part of Russia, it's not Ukraine. So he was killed in Kursk province during combat operation. According to media report, Gudkov was at the Marine Corps covert field headquarters. And the covert headquarters was hit by a missile strike by the Ukrainian armed forces. Well, I guess not so covert, right? As a result of the attack, at least 10 officers were killed, including the brigade command staff. Gudkov previously commanded the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet and remained on the front line even after being appointed to the top leadership of the Navy. This is a huge incompetence of Russian armed forces. Does anyone still believe that Russian army can win this war? Colonel Ruslan Goryachkin was also killed. He was just, by a missile strike from Ukrainian armed forces. He was appointed acting commander of the 8th Guard Combined Arms Army. He was one step away from becoming general. Goryachkin was killed by Ukrainian missile strike using Storm Shadows missile in Donetsk. And that is another huge incompetence. Failure to protect the commander, leaking information to Ukrainian intelligence services. Now, moving on. Former mayor of Luhansk, a pro-Russian separatist, Manolis Pilavov, he was blown up in Luhansk this week. He was one of those people who broke Ukraine in two pieces and separated Luhansk province and put it up in the air, so to speak. Well, death found him this past week. The fourth death happened in Moscow. Andrei Badalov, the vice president of Transneft, in good health, wealthy man, very rich man, the vice president of Transneft, a Russian oil company, was found dead in Moscow. His body was discovered by a security guard under the window of a high-rise building on Rublevskaya Chaussee, Rublev Highway, where he lived. The top manager, the vice president, fell, not from the window, from the balcony. But strangely enough, he fell from the balcony on the 17th floor, although he lived on the 10th floor. Transneft, the oil company, confirmed the death of the vice president, but did not comment on its circumstances. Now, I understand. It's become such a common occurrence these days that they don't even bother commenting the death of their executives. Another one bites the dust, what else can they say? A couple years ago, I would get fired up by such news, and I would be telling you how it became dangerous to live in Russia, to work in Russia, and so forth. But you know what? This is summer of 2025, and it is well understood. I don't need to say that any longer. It has become a common occurrence, flying out of the window. It's become a new normal, really. What else can I add? Again, Putin's Russia, July 2025. I'm keeping my eyes open for more open windows and balconies and, missiles and things like that. I will keep you informed. Please watch Weekly Economic News Update. It's coming up tomorrow. It's a new series I'm launching. For now, thank you very much. Carthago delenda est.